All right, so today we're diving into something really crucial in hospitals, but something most people probably don't even think about.
Yeah, invisible but absolutely essential. We're talking medical gas pipeline systems.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Every breath a patient takes in a hospital, the gases used in surgery, the life support machines, so much depends on these uh, networks, these kind of hidden lifelines running through the entire building.
And for anyone listening, understanding how these systems work, it really gives you an appreciation for how complex and vital they are. It's not just about knowing they're there, but understanding the engineering, the safety measures, everything that makes sure those gases are there when they're needed, reliably at the right pressure, the right purity.
For sure, for sure. We've got some really interesting sources for this deep dive. So we've got information from Beacon Metas, India. They specialize in these medical gas systems, right?
Yep. And then we've got the National Accreditation Board for Hospitals and Healthcare Providers. That's NABH for short. They set some pretty important quality standards for hospitals.
Right. And also Suprematic Consultancy. They help hospitals with their development and the accreditation process.
Oh, and we've got an article here, too, talking about all the best practices for installing these pipeline systems.
Gotcha. So our goal is to kind of piece all this information together, try and give our listeners a clear picture of how vital these systems are. So to get started, let's talk about why medical gas pipelines are so important in the first place. What makes them such a game changer compared to, how things were done before?
Well, imagine a hospital that still relies on individual gas cylinders. Can you imagine the chaos? Just think about the sheer logistics of that. You'd need people constantly tracking, moving, replacing all these cylinders all over the place.
Yeah, it'd be a nightmare, right?
Total nightmare. And then there's the constant risk of a crucial gas running out at the worst possible moment,
Oh,
in the middle of surgery or something.
oh yeah, that's not a good situation.
No, not at all. But medical gas pipelines, they provide a constant supply of gas directly to where it's needed. Operating rooms, ICUs, you name it. Think about it. A patient struggling to breathe, they need a constant flow of oxygen. That's what these systems provide. Or think about nitrous oxide for pain management, or ventilators powered by compressed air. It all happens seamlessly because of these pipelines.
So they're not just, some basic pipes running through the wall.
Oh, no. These systems are way more complex than that. They have to handle high pressure, keep the gases pure, and they reach every corner of the hospital. You've got manifolds, which are these central hubs where the gas supply is, controlled and then distributed to different parts of the hospital. It's pretty impressive when you think about it.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a huge step up from just lugging around cylinders all the time.
Totally. It's less manual handling, way less chance of running out of gas, and in the end, a much safer environment for patients.
And speaking of safety, that's not something we could just, brush aside with these systems, right? I mean, if something goes wrong with a metal gas pipeline, the consequences could be really serious.
Exactly. We're not just talking about, a minor inconvenience here. A leak, some kind of contamination in the gas supply, a sudden drop in pressure, any of those things could be life-threatening.
So then how do we ensure that these systems are as safe and reliable as they need to be day in and day out? How do we build that kind of reliability into them?
Right. That's the key question. And I think it all comes down to how these systems are installed.
So this podcast episode 5 source we have, it lays out some pretty clear steps for the installation process. And it all starts with really careful planning.
Makes sense. You got to start with a solid plan.
Yeah, so hospitals need to really get a grasp of their current gas needs and also anticipate what they'll need in the future, figure out where to put their gas sources, where to store them, and then map out the entire network of pipes.
And that initial assessment, it's got to be spot on. It's not just about meeting today's needs. It's about thinking ahead, thinking about how the hospital might grow and change, and making sure the system can handle whatever comes its way.
So what kind of gases they'll need in different areas, how much flow is needed for the equipment, that sort of thing.
Exactly. All the details matter.
So once the planning is done,
Yeah.
then you get to the materials, right? Choosing the right stuff for the pipes.
Right. And that's critical. This is not the place to cut corners. You need materials that can handle these medical gases, keep them pure, and absolutely positively have to be resistant to corrosion and leaks. Copper pipes are pretty much the industry standard for this kind of thing. They've got a really good track record.
Copper, yeah, that makes sense. Durable stuff. So after you've got the materials sorted, then comes the actual installation process. And this is where certified engineers come in, right? You can't just have anyone putting these pipes together.
Absolutely not. This is a highly specialized job. You need engineers who know the ins and outs of these systems, who understand all the standards and regulations, and who can install everything perfectly, safely. We're talking about ISO, NABH, NFPA, all those big names in safety and quality.
So those standards, they're like the rule book for everything, right down to the tiniest detail of the installation.
Pretty much. They cover everything, how the pipes are joined, the support systems, the whole 9 yards. And the engineers, they have to be certified, which means they've proven they know what they're doing.
Okay, so let's say the pipes are all in place, everything's looking good. What happens next?
Then the real testing begins. We're talking leak tests, purity checks, pressure tests. It's all about making absolutely sure that the system is going to work flawlessly before any patient relies on it.
So they really put these systems through the ringer before they go live, huh?
Oh yeah, multiple rounds of tests to catch even the tiniest problem. Like, they check for leaks in every possible way, they make sure the gases are pure, and they test the system under pressure to make sure it can handle the load.
Wow, that's pretty reassuring to know.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of scrutiny, but it's necessary.
And it doesn't just stop there, right? Once the system's up and running, you can't just forget about it.
Right, ongoing maintenance is key. Regular inspections, looking for any little problems before they become big problems. Like, they'll check for leaks, corrosion, any signs of contamination. And they'll also check things like pressure levels and flow rates to make sure everything's running smoothly.
So it sounds like there's a really, I guess you could say, a really robust system of regulations and standards in place to oversee all of this. And for good reason, right?
Oh, absolutely. You've got these different organizations, each with their own focus, but they all come together to create a kind of safety net for these systems. You've got the National Fire Protection Association, the NFPA, and they have their NFPA 99 standard, which covers just about everything, storing the gases safely, supplying them the whole pipeline system. It's really fascinating how it all works together.
Right. So you've got the NFPA focusing on fire safety. Then you've got NABH, which is more focused on patient safety here in India. And then there's ISO, which is the global standard.
Exactly. Each organization brings its own perspective and expertise, and that creates a really comprehensive approach to safety.
So for our listeners in India, those NABH standards are especially important, right?
They are, yeah. While NFPA 99 is more international, NABH is all about patient safety in the Indian context. And that includes making sure medical gas pipelines are safe and reliable. It's not just about following international best practices, it's about adapting them to the specific needs and conditions here in India.
So that kind of gives you a sense of, how seriously hospitals here take patient safety. Like, even the infrastructure itself is designed with safety in mind.
That's a good point. It's about thinking holistically, making sure every element of the hospital contributes to a safe environment.
And then there's ISO 7396, which is the international standard for medical gas pipelines.
Yep, that sets the benchmark globally.
And we also came across something called the Medical Gas Pipeline System, or MGPS guidelines. Do you know much about those?
Yeah, those are probably more specific guidelines for installation and maintenance.
Right. So there's really no shortage of rules and guidelines to follow when it comes to these systems.
And for good reason. The risks are just too high to ignore these standards.
Yeah, our source was pretty clear about that. Like, you could have leaks that create dangerous situations, fire hazards, even fatalities if things go really wrong.
So, if you're a hospital, you want to choose the right people to install these systems. It's not just about finding the cheapest option. It's about finding someone who really knows what they're doing, someone who understands all the safety requirements and takes them seriously.
Yeah, I think our podcast episode 5 source had some good advice on what to look for in a provider. Like, number one, they should have a really solid understanding of all those standards we talked about, NABH, ISO, NFPA, and not just understand them, but have a proven track record of actually following them.
Right. It's one thing to know the rules. It's another to actually put them into practice.
And then, of course, they should use high-quality materials. No cutting corners on the pipes or anything like that.
Absolutely. The materials have to be top-notch. You don't want to risk leaks or contamination because you tried to save a few bucks.
And then making sure that certified professionals are involved every step of the way, right? From the initial design to the ongoing maintenance. You want to know that the people working on these systems have the right training and qualifications.
And that they're keeping up to date on the latest best practices because things are always changing in this field.
Right. And I guess another important thing is having 24/7 emergency support available. I mean, if something goes wrong with one of these systems, you need to know you can get help right away.
Oh, absolutely. Medical gas systems are critical infrastructure. You can't afford to have any downtime.
So are there any companies that really stand out in this field, like companies that hospitals can trust to handle these systems properly?
Yeah, definitely. Like we've got Beacon Medes. They're a big player in this space. They specialize in air, vacuum, and gas distribution systems. They've got a really big global network, which means they've got a lot of experience working in different environments and meeting different regulatory requirements.
And to pre-med consultancy, they were
Yeah.
mentioned too, right?
Yeah, they focus specifically on installing medical gas pipelines. They seem to be really committed to safety and compliance.
So speaking of compliance, we should probably talk a bit more about NABH and the role they play in all of this.
Yeah, NEBH is a really important organization. They set the quality standards for hospitals in India.
Right, so they're part of the Quality Council of India, and their job is to create accreditation programs for healthcare organizations, basically to make sure everyone is meeting the same high standards.
Yeah, they're kind of like the gold standard when it comes to quality in healthcare.
And when a hospital is NABH accredited, it means they've met all the requirements for patient safety, and that includes their medical gas pipeline systems. So it's a way for patients to know that they're in a hospital that takes safety seriously.
Exactly. It's a mark of quality and trust.
And Supreme Medic, they actually offer support for hospitals that are going through the NABH accreditation process.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It can be a pretty complicated process, so it's good to have expert help.
So it shows, how much work goes into achieving and maintaining those high standards.
And Beacon Medes, they seem to be really committed to quality, too. Like, they really emphasize excellence in meeting the needs of the medical gas market. It shows they take their responsibility seriously.
All right, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about the scope of these systems. Like what kinds of products and services do companies like Beacon Medes offer?
Well, it looks like they offer a pretty wide range of products. Everything from, the basic gases, air, vacuum, oxygen, to the equipment that delivers those gases, waste anesthetic gas disposal units, manifolds, pipelines, medical supply units. Those are the things you see in patient rooms and operating rooms where the gases are actually accessed.
Medical supply unit is the panel on the wall, right, where they have all the different gas outlets.
Yeah, exactly. That's the interface between the pipeline system and the medical equipment.
So doctors and nurses can connect what they need safely and quickly.
Exactly. And then, of course, there are the point of use outlets, the actual places where the gases come out. It's a whole system from the source of the gases to the patient's bedside.
So it's not just about the equipment itself. It's about the whole package, right? The installation, the maintenance, the training.
Exactly. Beacon Medes, they do all of that. They help hospitals set up the systems, they provide maintenance, they offer training for staff. And it looks like they even have this thing called MyMedGas.
What's that?
It's a digital solution for managing these pipeline systems. It helps with things like compliance, tracking maintenance, and making sure staff are properly trained.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like a digital tool to make sure everything's running smoothly and safely.
That's the idea, yeah. And Supreme Medic, they specifically mention medical gas pipeline installation as one of their core services.
Right, so it's really a key part of what they do.
It seems to be, yeah. And they also offer consultancy services, which is interesting. Like, they don't just install the systems, they also advise hospitals on how to plan and design their whole infrastructure.
Yeah, they help with all phases of hospital development, right? From the initial planning stages to the architectural design.
Exactly. And they even offer support for NABH accreditation.
So they're kind of like a one-stop shop for hospitals that are, building new facilities or upgrading their existing ones.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And it's worth mentioning they have people like Dr. Srita Ram Vishnoi, who's got a lot of experience in hospital strategy and quality.
Oh, right. He's the one who's worked on all those hospital projects.
Yeah, he seems to be a real expert in this area.
So having someone like that on board is definitely a big plus for any hospital. All right, so to wrap up, we've covered a lot of ground here. What are some of the key takeaways our listeners should keep in mind?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is just how crucial medical gas pipeline systems are. They're not just some boring pipes in the walls. They're a vital part of how hospitals function, how they deliver care to patients.
Right, and they're a lot more complex than they might seem at first glance.
Exactly. There's a whole lot of planning, engineering, and safety measures that go into these systems. And it all has to be done right because the stakes are so high. We're talking about patient safety, even lives being on the line.
And The regulations and standards that are in place, they're there for a reason. They're there to make sure these systems are as safe and reliable as they can possibly be.
And it's important to remember that this is an ongoing process. It's not just about installing the system and then forgetting about it. There needs to be regular maintenance, inspections, and training to make sure everything stays in top shape.
Right, and choosing the right provider is obviously a big decision for any hospital.
Absolutely. You need a provider who has the expertise, the experience, and the commitment to quality to handle this kind of critical infrastructure.
So it's a lot to consider, but it's definitely worth taking the time to understand how these systems work and what makes them so important.
I agree. It's one of those things that often goes unnoticed, but it's really the backbone of modern healthcare.
And it makes you wonder, what's next for these systems? What kind of innovations are on the horizon?
Yeah, like how will technology change the way these systems are designed, installed, and maintained?
Right, like
Yeah.
will we see more sophisticated sensors, more automation, maybe even artificial intelligence playing a role in keeping these systems running smoothly?
It's definitely something to keep an eye on. These systems are only going to become more important in the future, so it's exciting to think about how they might evolve.
Yeah, a lot to think about.